yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello and welcome to Jen Taylor Rerouting, where being rude is never acceptable, but sarcasm is welcome and swearing isn't always a bad option. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Jen Taylor Rerouting. Today I have Hector Bassett with me. Now, the great thing about this is that I always thought people with accents were super sexy, right? Because you sound different. And then I realized at some point, if you have an accent, so do I. So
Correct.
We're all super sexy, no matter
Correct.
what. Correct. And you are, see, I was thinking I was 5 hours ahead of you. I always want to be ahead of everybody. Maybe it's competitive, I don't know. But you're actually like 19 hours ahead of me. So it's Saturday morning
Correct.
for you. Yep.
Yeah.
How are you, Hector, in New Zealand?
I'm really good, thanks. I'm really good. Just got up and got my boys organised and headed into the office for a couple of hours.
All right. That sounds perfect on your Saturday morning.
Yes.
I'm glad that you're with me. So I'm just going to give a couple facts.
Okay.
Hector, you and I met, and we actually haven't met. This is the first time we've actually seen each other in motion.
Yes.
But we have the same business coach, although we have vastly different businesses. Your business is Davidson Fraser.
That's it.
And you do accounting and all the things that people like me don't like. So I like people like you because it's called a resource. So tell me a little bit. Davidson Fraser Limited is the name of your business. You have 3 boys, correct?
That's right, yeah.
But you started your business when only 2 were born, and it's both of their middle names, Davidson and Fraser.
Yeah, Davidson's is the middle name of our oldest boy. Fraser is the middle name of our middle boy. And they both have, Davidson's also my dad's middle name, and Fraser is also my wife's grandmother's maiden name. So it's got a family connection. Yep.
And that's great. And then now the youngest, how old's your youngest boy?
He is 6.
So does he know that he was cut out of that loop? Because that's going to come down on you pretty hard at some point.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of our clients asked me whether once we had Eli, whether I was going to change the name. I said, we like the way Davidson Fraser sounds. If he wants to grow up and take over the business, then we can look at it then.
Okay, perfect. That's a good deal. Okay, so you do accounting and tax and business planning and coaching.
Yeah.
And you love it.
I really do. It's been a bit of a evolutionary process, and yep, it's forever evolving. And it's, as I said, I started accounting and tax, and then realised I could help people more by actually having a plan in place and helping people understand their cash flow. And you know how it is. I just love helping people, and I've just taken a bit of time to figure out exactly how best I do that.
I love it. And you're, a lot of us that coach, well, we all do such different things, but I think you're the only accountant and tax person. So I just haven't had a question yet, but that's the only reason I haven't bombarded you. But I love that interaction through our group, where people are like, thank you for being here, Hector. We need you. Yeah. So you live in New Zealand, but you were actually born in Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're 49, which means
Yes.
nothing except that I'm 46. So I can just pick on you about being like the older brother.
That's right.
And so how different are Australia and New Zealand, just for someone who's been to neither?
I think there's a lot of similarities. I think one of the stereotypical differences that people pick on is Australians, with their slight twang that in their accent, they come across generally as a little bit more cocky, you might say, overconfident. Some of us Kiwis would say, and us Kiwis are a little bit more understated. We still there's a thing called the Kiwi number 8 wire attitude, which is that number 8 wire is the concept of basically using a piece of wire to fix a fence or join something. So we have a quiet self-confidence that anything is possible. It might not look exactly the way you want it to, but it will do the job.
We call that duct tape in America.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's some of the differences, and I'm still, I've still got my brothers, two older brothers and a sister who still live in Australia, and I visit Australia quite a lot. Shalom, my wife, has got relatives in Australia, who of course are now my relatives as well. So anyway, we're pretty close.
So there's 4 of you in the family. You were number 3, 2 boys, then you, then a younger sister. And
Yeah, that's it.
born in Australia.
Yes.
What was mom? Your mom was from, you call her mum.
Yeah, because you guys put an O-M-O-M, we spell it M-U-M, yeah.
Right. So dad was born in New Zealand. Your mom was born in Australia.
Yep.
And so you ended up being born and growing up your first 12 years in Australia. So how did they navigate that? How did you end up in Australia?
Actually, there's quite a long story to that, so I'll give you the abridged version. My dad was born in New Zealand, and the abridged version is exactly why he went to Australia. But he ended up in Australia and met my dear mum, and dad was married before mum, so his marriage to mum was his second marriage, and they ended up in Australia and met and had all us kids. We were in New South Wales, and we shifted around a lot. My oldest brother was born in Bowral, and my middle brother was born in a place called I can't even remember. I was born in Narrabri, and my sister was born in Gunnedah. So yeah, that's kind of how we came to be in Australia.
All right. And so what did they do work-wise?
Dad was he was a really talented guy, actually, but he in hindsight lacked a little bit of focus, and he's listed on my birth certificate as being a salesman, and he was a pretty good salesman, and I guess the more I go on, the more I realize I'm quite like him. As a teenager growing up, it bothered me that I was like him, but I reconciled my relationship with my dad and embrace the fact that I am a bit like him, and he was a really good man, and he really taught me a lot.
Now I'm going to talk about growing up would you consider both of your parents as being alcoholics, or was it just alcohol was common in the house?
Look, I've come to the conclusion that I'm not convinced I'm not convinced I believe in the definition of alcoholism. I get that it's a disease, and there's no question that there's a certain reality to it. But how much you're predisposed to it or whatever, I don't know. But so I won't get into all my philosophy on it, Jen. But the thing for me is, they were both out of control with their drinking. Mum and dad, and they both smoked like trains. They were, and for me, it's all about. It's largely to do with that they were broken inside. They were struggling to cope with life, so that was their crutch: cigarettes and alcohol. And Mum was betting as well. But they did things like I remember going to bed at night, and Dad had given up smoking by this time, but Mum had her fags and a gin and tonic beside her bed, and Dad had his stout or his gin, and at that time we didn't see it as that was our normal. But you know, when you grow up and start to see the impact it's had of the, anyway, I'm digressing a little bit, but what, did I answer your question?
You did. I think I'm trying to clarify if it's different in country. I think you and I are in the same generation, and so our parents are pretty much in the same generation. And
Yes.
generationally, drinking and smoking, like in the car, in the house, you know, they didn't know maybe. I don't know. People thought it was a lie that cigarettes were so bad for you, and are you going to believe
Yeah.
everything the media says, and it's really
Yeah.
not that big of a deal. And the stigma was just so completely different. We're talking like early 70s,
Yes.
through the 70s, and alcohol was viewed very differently.
Yeah.
Alcoholism as far as a disease and a diagnosis was different back then. And so I grew up similarly, where martini every single night, several of them. um, and it wasn't like you're raging drunk beating people all the time,
No.
although that could be part of it.
Yeah.
It was more just very, so this was what you did every day,
Yeah.
and there was no negative stigma or connotation. So I'm just trying to gauge with you if it was more, I know when my dad drank and he hit a certain point, he was very angry and abusive.
Yeah.
Some people grew up in our generation where no, it was just normal, but it
Yeah.
wasn't violent.
Yeah.
So it was just like a normal thing for you. There wasn't anything violent necessarily.
No, no, and it's sort of hard to define exactly how it was with mum because she died when I was so young. I was 9, and so, and I still just remember her as this this wonderful, loving, caring person who I lost at such an early age. So that's how it is with her. With Dad, though, the thing is he did get violent a few times, but he was essentially a passive guy, and for the most part, the impact that I found influenced me was his emotional detachment. He was never taught how to express his feelings, so everything was very matter of fact, and there was for a long time there was just a sense of disconnectedness. And in some relationships, that's kind of a bit neither here nor there. But when it's your dad, and all you, sorry, all you want from him is to be close. So that was the biggest impact for me. Is like his emotional distance, and that was his. See, and now I understand a little bit, and that was his way of coping. That was his way of coping. You know, when you got all this stuff going on inside, you can't manage. Uh, his way of dealing was is close it down.
And I think, again, generationally, that was very common. And I think
Absolutely.
male versus female, it's more common. So you did say it, and I know this is when we talked before, when we've emailed and we've talked and stuff, this is some of the toughest stuff to talk about. So I was kind of setting the stage.
Yeah.
And you were only 9 when your mom passed away,
Yeah.
when you lost your mom. And you know, we both have kids that are that age, so we see where they are developmentally. You're
Absolutely.
very, you're young, you're naive, you've learned how to read, the world is exciting and open. And you did say, before to me and here today, is that you had, yes, there was a lot of drinking, but you had a really close, special relationship with your mom, and you always knew how much she loved you.
Yes.
And you have expressed gratitude that you've had that to take with you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Look. So I think that's. So no. Look, mate. No question. It was. It was a. It was a hard experience losing your mum at that age. I look at our. We we have a 9-year-old boy at the moment, and he's a lot like me. He's a very sensitive kid, and I think about, you know, how he'd go if his mum went, you know, and so it's a challenging emotional experience. Having said that, you know, being willing to face these things as I have, and get help as I have. I just have this deep appreciation for what it is to have a mum who my wife is amazing, mate. She's a loving, caring, so I just have a deep appreciation for what it is to have a mum in their lives. So that actually helps me love on my boys. That helps me love on my wife, and so I'm determined to pass on that legacy to my kids, not necessarily the things that I learned early on.
Right. That's okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'm good at digressing.
No, it's never digressing in an interview. I always feel like when you've lost someone that's wonderful, that meant so much,
yep,
you're blessed to actually miss them and have that. When my dad died, it was a relief.
Yes.
That he wasn't going to be around anymore. And so as horrible as it is when I hear that someone lost someone that they love that much, that you miss that much, that had a positive impact, I think, yes, but you're blessed that you had that, even though it was taken too soon.
Yes.
And I know that kind of gratitude is what you feel. Now, when she passed away, was it expected at all?
No, well, it wasn't for me. See, what I learned afterwards, that though, she was 47. So, you don't die of a heart attack without having some kind of, probably, I suspect, some kind of predisposed, health condition. Having said that, the fact that, she was overweight, ate badly, drank too much, smoked, was incredibly stressed because she didn't manage her life. So, she would do whatever she did during the day, go down to the pub, bet, whatever. And then, so she'd be up watching the television till, late at night, smoking, drinking, and just didn't have a healthy lifestyle. So there's no question in my mind that had a significant contribution on that. And what I also learned many years after she died, that wasn't her first heart attack. That was her third heart attack.
Wow.
And so some see, and this is the thing that's still a little confounding for me, is that here's this lady who has 4 beautiful children and has 2 heart attacks and still doesn't have the willpower, doesn't have the wherewithal, doesn't have the help to stop drinking and smoking. That would unquestionably would have contributed to her length of life, potentially a lot.
Wow. So you describe when you lost your mom. Clearly, you're a 9-year-old boy. You weren't expecting it or prepared for it or any of that. You were very lost. And she was, like you explained, your dad as being more emotionally disconnected, and your mom being the one that was very loving.
Yeah.
And I imagine, what happened to Dad when she was gone?
Well, he was, he was his self-professed condition was alcoholism, and he went through a period, and I can't remember exact time frame, but basically a short period after she died, he drank really heavily, and he just crashed and burned. And see, here's the interesting. This is still confounding and interesting to me, is that shortly after she died, he was hospitalized, and basically the doctors said to him, Ken, you can keep drinking, but you will die. And that was something shifted. Something was enough in him to, and I guess also he was really, he didn't want. We would have been orphaned, obviously, if we'd lost him. And so he got into AA, and I think he had one lapse after getting into AA, but essentially he was, that was ages ago, and he's passed now, but he must have lived 35, 40 years sober. So and see, and again, see, as I've kind of grown up and learned, at one point I was frustrated and cross with him for everything that worked out in my life. It was my doing, according to me, and everything that sucked was his fault. And I kind of had this realization that basically I had it all upside down. The reason my life wasn't working out wasn't because of him; it was because of me. And yes, there were some things that happened, and I don't have a life without him. And so I just got to see that I've got a choice in life. I can carry on being a victim for the rest of my life and get the results that I've been getting or I can, look after myself, face what I need to face. Yeah. So, so that's kind of how it went with that's what happened with Dad.
And you were lost, but he was as well. He
Oh,
was,
mate,
and I knew
absolutely.
You said he was a dry drunk, and I know exactly what that is. I mean, in all of the addiction information, however you view that, an addict's an addict's an addict. So if they're not using alcohol, something else generally takes the place, and it can just be behavior. And if his behavior was detachment, and he was lost, it just seems like it's amplified through addiction. So you had a dad that was lost for a while and a dry drunk and not there for you or not well mentally.
No.
And I know that he wasn't he was never violent. He wasn't violent or harmful, and he was trying to kind of get his stuff together for his kids.
Yeah.
But that emotional detachment or kind of abusiveness, not the lack of being there, is sometimes I'd rather be hit. Just hit me and get it over with.
I know what you're saying, and that was the thing. Like, look, I think that's interesting. I think that was part of my struggle was, he put food on the table and heard some of the stories historically that, basically he sold stuff to go and buy food, but he put food on the table. He cared for us. He kept us together. And he did his best. So it was kind of, that's always been an interesting dynamic I had to get past my accusation and my frustration at him and blaming him, but also acknowledge that, this person that I was born to be had been emotionally affected, traumatized, you might say. And whether that was my doing or his doing or anybody's, my friends at school, maybe it was them that when they hassled me, but regardless of the emotional experience, I still needed to resolve that to have the life that I wanted to have. And so, so even though times are changing, like you've pointed out, and thank God they have changed, where it's more acceptable to talk about depression or some kind of psychological problems. It's still a very precarious world to kind of try and resolve those issues. And one of the things for me is I've just spent a lot of time seeking help, and I've sought out a lot of people who are not helpful, and I've had relationships where I've exposed myself and that trust has been breached. And and you know, if you're not careful, then you go and just carry on being closed off rather than going, okay, no, that person's just a dickhead, excuse my language, and or they're dealing with their own stuff. I'm not going to use them. Yeah, so it was a tricky dynamic. It was a tricky dynamic to kind of understand and then kind of work out how to handle it.
Right. So you kind of went forward a little bit because you were a teenager and you were a normal teenager, but you said you kind of, your big smile and your happiness and it was kind of a facade.
Yes.
We all wear masks.
Yes.
You know. But you switched. I don't know if it was you switched high schools or was it when you went to college that you met you called them good guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're still friends to now.
Yeah. 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 I moved colleges. I moved colleges. We immigrated because we immigrated from Australia back to New Zealand to be with my father's father before he died in a little place in top of the South Island called Motueka. And a couple of my friends had gone to the school called Nelson College. And so I ended up going there and meeting these guys who, and it's very interesting. Because they were, you know, we didn't talk about our feelings. We didn't share our hearts with one another. Well, in some ways we kind of did, because they all knew, they all knew that my mum had died. They didn't take pity on me, but they loved on me in their own way. And to looking from the outside, you wouldn't, you know, we just hassled each other. My nickname was Wookie, and one of the other guys was Tubbs, and one of my good mates, his nickname's Stumpy because he's, you know, the other four of us are tall and he's quite a short guy and he's got short fingers, and so we see, you know, you say kind of nasty things, and but actually, especially looking back, it was all in love. And I had a couple of the parents as well, that a couple of the mums who really loved on me. And this guy Stumpy in particular, Marty, his parents were very kind to me. I overstayed my welcome on many occasions at their house, but they just kind of went, okay, it's Hector, we'll have him, come on.
But those are the people that start to, I mean, I didn't have like a father figure till I was 19. And I didn't believe he was really as nice as he said he was because I'd never experienced that. And I think, you know, that's why I feel so strongly that in our daily lives, just being ourselves, we have the ability to make an enormous impact on someone else. And clearly,
absolutely,
you have these four buddies that you joke and you pick on each other, and that's a way that you're showing that you care for each other. And then parents that kind of pulled you in, and yes, they all knew that your mom had passed. And all of us, anyone, whether you've lost someone like that or not, are going to be empathetic to how that would feel for you. So you had these people in your life that really made this huge impact just by being themselves and loving you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But you still decided maybe you could find some answers in the bottom of a bottle.
Yeah, I did, and it was quite interesting because I see, because those are the guys who introduced me to alcohol.
Damn them. Well, I mean, alcohol can be healthy. It doesn't have to be unhealthy.
No. And look, hey, and for the most part, well, with us, it quite often was unhealthy, in my opinion. But see, one of the things I really noticed, so that was like how old was I then when I met them? 16 or something like that. And so we grew up, they went to university. I went out to the workplace, but I still got to spend time with them. And then as we got into our early 20s and we were independent adults, one of the things I noticed is we'd go out and, you know, drink as much as we drink, carry on. And I never believed that I was an alcoholic and I still don't believe that I ever was. But it was always, it always seemed to me a bigger problem than it was for them. That I would wake up the next day very remorseful, very depressed. I'm not sure you call it clinical depression or exactly how you define that either, but it was just a sense of being lost. Yeah. So, and I just knew, I guess it was partly driven. I knew I just wanted more from life. And it was like, I agree with you. Like and especially as you're young, our youth is lost on us. We're silly when we're young. And I think there's, to some extent, you can't avoid that. But yes. And so as I went into my 20s and 30s, I realized that I was continuing to get drunk and basically carry on and avoid trying to accomplish the things I really wanted to. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think the alcohol, anything, you can pick any modality. It doesn't have to be alcohol, but for this
Absolutely.
example, alcohol doesn't have to be the enemy or the bad thing, but for you, you were using it similarly to how you had seen it growing up.
Yes.
And it wasn't what you wanted or who you wanted to be or how you wanted to live your life. And it's hard not to get caught up in that. I think you're right. Our youth is lost on us. And then you also have relationships that aren't good. And I mean, I'm here to tell you, and I'll tell my kids, you're not going to meet the type of person that you want to marry in a strip club getting drunk. They're not there because I know it's shocking.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, what did she just say? You can't get the person, if you want to be in a relationship with someone and you want it a certain way and that's not it, then that's not where you should be looking for it.
Yep.
And you found that to be the case with relationships where you put in too much trust. Like you said, you're a sensitive lad, right? So you're opening your heart to things, and that's when people hurt you.
Yeah, and this is as best as I can understand it. Essentially, what happened was, two of my first relationships were with people who were already in a relationship. So it was this sense of repeating what I'd learnt as a child. Even though I knew it wasn't going to work out, I still carried on that behavior, which was with my mum, it was loving someone who couldn't love me back because she was gone, and it was a similar thing with my dad. So it was like this self-fulfilling prophecy, and it was completely unconscious to me. Trying to have a relationship with a person who's already in a relationship, it's literally insane. And yet I was driven to that for some time, and it took me a long time to, and I'm still out working I've got a healthy relationship now, but like you said, the crutches, whatever the crutches, and so there's still this dynamic to my personality. It's almost like a self-destruct button that still will kick in if I let it. And it's just the biggest thing that's different in my life today is that I have actively sought out people, mainly people, but in a way, kind of a structure in my life. So I've got a wife who loves me. I've got kids who rely on me. I've got a business that I love, but also relies on me. So I've got all these things that are calling me into being in life. Sorry, I'm getting ahead, but that's kind of what it was with I started out with those crazy relationships because it was kind of a self-protection mechanism as well. It's like it was trying to get a little bit of titillation, basically, because I knew there was no risk of commitment, and even though I'd hurt a little bit, it was kind of minimizing the hurt. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, because I've done it myself. So it's just interesting. For me, it was, I don't want to be with a man who's not, I want to be with a man who's emotionally available, but I will choose
Yes.
men who are unavailable.
Yes.
And then I will bitch about how they're
Yes.
unavailable.
Yes.
And I will finally leave because
That's
none of
right.
my needs are met.
That's right.
Right. And so, and then I will leave to go find that emotionally available man and end up with someone who's unavailable again. And why? Because I'm not putting my ass on the line.
Yeah.
I'm protecting myself. I'm never
Yeah.
allowing myself to be vulnerable. And so when you leave, like you said, there's some amount of hurt, but it's not that much because you were never completely invested because you set it up that way.
Yeah.
And yes, it will fail, but and so I think we all have a self-destruct button, and to do it the other way is scary. It's scary and it's raw and it's vulnerable, and if it fails you will be incredibly hurt, but you will also never be satisfied.
Yeah.
So I do understand, but I'm going to back up just a little bit. You realized this was not the direction you wanted to go.
I did.
And went to therapy. Now I've had therapy that I thought was fantastic and worked, and I've had therapy that I thought was worse.
Yeah.
Like you just helped make that one worse.
Yeah.
And so you found, like, you have to pull the good out of every situation. So you went to therapy. That wasn't overwhelmingly helpful.
No.
And you did go to support groups.
Yeah.
Now the support groups, was that like an AA type support group? Was it something else?
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of groups that have kind of stemmed out of alcohol, AA, because then there's a group called Al-Anon and a group called Adult Children of Alcoholics, and both of those groups I attended at different times. And so they're exactly as they say. The Al-Anon is for people, mainly spouses, but also anybody who's been affected by alcoholism, and they're not necessarily the alcoholic. And the same with ACOA. You're not necessarily an alcoholic. But it's just kind of understanding the implications, the effects. And that's where I started to, I definitely started to find a bit of peace there. And probably the thing that stands out is, as weird as it was, I kind of believed that one of the premises of getting healing is coming to believe in a God of your understanding. And it's like, whoa, and you talk to, there's people that's out there, pal, and it's also this act of surrender. It's kind of, and I still struggle to accept the fact that my life had become unmanageable. Well, I definitely had become unmanageable. Yeah, are you with me? So yeah, it's just so that's where I started to find a real. It was just finding peace, because that was the thing. Like I knew there was something going on inside. So I was looking for titillation and entertainment and avoidance, and like you say, an element of titillation and fun, that's cool, but when you're just avoiding it all the time. So I came and found this group of people that were just really honest and vulnerable with one another. It was immensely comforting, and it was immensely healing, and I just loved the whole, we don't have to prove ourselves here. We don't have to be any particular way. We just get to hang out and love each other, really, and just very airy fairy for some people. But that was the start of that was those groups were definitely the start of me finding peace and a little bit of direction in my life.
And also, I think you're not alone.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, actually. That's a really good point, because that's one of the reasons why people continue to fail, because they don't ask for help. They don't have, or worse, they've got people in their lives that are dragging them back.
Right.
And see, that was happening with me a little bit with my mates. See, they were, and I actually ended up shifting away from Wellington to Palmerston North now. And they weren't even intentionally dragging me down, but that was a healthy thing for me to move away at that time in my life. Anyway.
So now you're not alone. You feel like you're getting healthier. Those unhealthy relationships, you can recognize your self-destruct button. But you did also make good decisions through all that. It's not like, I mean, it was very hard, and I don't want to minimize that. You know, your own self-destruction is never a pretty picture. But you made enough good choices to come through that kind of better and stronger, and you were able to step back and realize that.
Yeah, I think I somehow managed to stay in a relationship with a bunch of people, and despite the unhealthy male-female relationships I had, I was still basically a decent guy, and you know, you get what you give out. So I had good friends that supported me and people that were genuinely concerned for me and tried to take care of me, and we took, so is that what you're asking? Yeah, I had a good bunch of friends.
You did. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good person, and that doesn't mean that I'm always a good parent, and that I've never made bad choices, or that I haven't been the catalyst in the bad parts of the relationship, or the failure, or the whatever. I mean, we're all part of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you were able to recognize you did have this support network. You did make good choices in there with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And you're in the right place. So let's talk about, you touched on the God aspect of the 12-step type programs. So had you never gone to church or had any experience with that prior?
That's it. Somehow, for some reason, as kids, and I don't know whether this was a generational thing either, our mum and dad weren't believers, but we used to go to Sunday school. I'm convinced they just did it as get the kids out of the house for a couple of hours. So and I remember that very clearly, the not specifics but the experience. It was very weird going and sitting with these people I didn't know, and having somebody read out of this Bible, which as far as I was concerned was an interesting storybook, but that was it. So that was my first experience with faith, as it were. The second thing that I found out much later in life was that for me was part of my journey to faith, which was my two older brothers had been, it's not baptized, what do you call it? Christened. And it came time for me to be christened, and my dad apparently said to Mum, "Glad, I'm really not comfortable taking this boy into a church and promising to bring him up as a God-fearing Christian when I'm not going to do that." And this is one of the things that Christianity's being a Christian now. It's a funny experience. I think one of the keys is being honest with yourself. And that for me, that was a honest step. And see, this is also what I believe is that your parents do lay a foundation for you. And so that step was part of my step to coming to faith. He was like going, "No, I'm not going to do this. I can't honestly go into a church and promise that I'm going to do that." There you go. That's it. That was something of an answer. Was it an answer to your question?
It was. I wondered kind of what the exposure was that you had growing up, because I know that you're a Christian now, so that's sort of a big difference from not being raised with that. So I'm sure, I mean, it doesn't say you need to go to church. The 12-step program doesn't say go to church and believe in God.
No, it doesn't. No, and many people in AA and Al-Anon are, I don't know whether anti's quite the right word, but they don't want anything to do with church anyway. And that's my experience. So most people don't. It's the church and the organizations that people don't want a part of. It's not the faith itself.
Oh, absolutely.
But so yeah, that was.
You did start going to church though.
Yeah. What happened was, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but actually, this is how it happened. See, I'm not sure exactly when it started, but going to those Al-Anon groups, I think it started it started this internal desire, this search for something greater than myself. And I loved the peace that I got from what I started to believe was this person external to me. And I was away at a basketball trip. Speaking of drinking, there was quite a lot of drinking at that basketball tournament. And there was a lady there who was the wife of one of the captain in our team, and we were in the motel, a bunch of us talking afterwards, and she started talking about this Alpha program, which is an introduction to Christianity. And here's the thing that prompted me to go, was that part of what had stopped me going to church was, excuse my definition, but all the weirdos that went to church. And this person was cool. I really respected her. And so maybe they weren't all like that. That was something of the dynamic that happened. And so then I went to this Alpha course, which is this guy called Nicky Gumbel, who he's an English guy, and they have these pre-recorded tapes that you go and listen to and talk to people about God. And I just they had a conversation about Christ, and which was, some people believe he's a good man, or some people believe he's, so he's just a good man. And his explanation was, he's either an evil man or an insane man. You can't go proclaiming to be God and just be a good man. I realized in that moment that I believed in Christ. And so from then it's just been a case of, I started going to the church that was offering that program. And that was actually where I met my wife.
Yes, I remember this. So now your wife's name is Shalom, which I think is, in your story, such an ironic name because it means peace. And I think she's given you a lot of that. So it was actually, she was just visiting. You had joined this church and you're kind of navigating your journey and believing in Christ. And
you did a great job of reading that email. Carry on.
You didn't actually say that. When I read it, it kind of hit. I went, wow, that's ironic that was your wife's name, and that you met. She was visiting her old church, which was where you were attending in your newly found navigation of Christianity.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just think, I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's pretty amazing that she just happened to be there visiting.
Yes.
And you were there searching, and she ended up being your piece. So
we still both have a slightly different version of what happened on that day. It's
okay,
so funny.
Let's talk about that. What's yours?
Well, I had another quite interesting part to the story is, about 2 weeks before that, through some other people, this social gathering I was at, I had met Shalom's sister and her husband and her 2 little kids. And I remember her 2 little kids who are now
they're your nephews now, and you met them.
It's mate. I met them before. So I met them, and Shalom is a singer, and she used to sing worship. And here's my version of the story. She wasn't I don't know how in life. There was women in life where eyes would meet, and you just kind of go, whoa. She wasn't that for me. But here's what happened is, and so my introduction to her, because I've always been quite a, forward person in that regard. It's like, I'm not gonna die not knowing. Okay. So I wasn't making an approach in a relationship, boy girl thing. I just introduced myself and said, look, I love how you worship, and I just really admired her. And I just said, I'd met your sister last week and just sort of had a bit of a chat with her. And then she opened her mouth and started to talk. I was gone.
So it wasn't the across the room love at first sight
No,
heart.
it was.
She actually had to speak. Usually it's the opposite, Hector.
Yeah, probably is. And see, this is the thing about relationship and human beings, isn't it? She was speaking, but it was like it was like the presence of an angel. And here's one of the sort of practical things as well, is that quite early on, her background's completely different. She's been brought up a Christian, no rock music. They didn't celebrate Christmas for a while because that was a pagan based, anyway. So quite religious religion, but very good girl all her life. Here was me, this crazy, have fun guy, and so she quickly got to know a little bit about me because I'm an open kind of guy. And she was, despite her clear boundaries, she was very accepting of who I was.
And that was probably hard because you were still accepting who you were.
Oh, absolutely. And see, that's the thing, mate. That's the thing I love about being married. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's an easy path being married and committed to somebody, especially when you've got two worlds colliding. And we were both sort of in our 30s, so we were both stuck in our ways. And the first couple of years of our marriage were blinking, hard work, man. But it's a beautiful thing. I'm a 10 times, 100 times better person because I've been with her and everything that she's contributed to my life. And her family, I was sold on her family, and that was funny. I met her parents a couple of months at her mum's birthday party, and they were both very excited to meet me. Because she wasn't, how it is, a Christian girl, but she was 30 something years old. They were waiting for the man of her dreams to come along. Oh, we're very excited to meet you, Hector. They were lovely, and they've got a big family, and it's all a bit overwhelming at times, but and their family's completely different to the family that we were brought up in. So, and that's another thing. I'm just massively, our boys have got, there's 15 kids in their generation. All of 5 siblings in Shalom's family, all married, all with 3 children. Beautiful symmetry. But yeah, and there's her youngest brother has got 3 boys about our kids' age. And how much do you think they like spending time at the Campbell's farm? Quite a lot. So it's a beautiful thing. A family that, and as you get to know them more, you see they've got fur balls too, but they're a beautiful family, and love abounds.
That's amazing. And you said that you feel like because of your faith in God, and it wasn't just that you reached out to. I really loved that you told me you attended personal development groups. Yes. And you have no problem being open about the fact that you don't have your life entirely together ever, and that you are a work in progress. Like, amen to that. All right, 100%. But you made peace with that fact, and that it is a work in progress. And that the other thing you said is that you're smart enough to know you need help, and it's okay to ask because you are a work in progress. And although we all have ego and pride, 2 things that the Christian church tells you to beware of. But you see the benefits when you embraced your faith and you embrace asking for help, and you embrace the fact that personal development groups are important because you're never not a work in progress. And so, I mean, those are huge things that take lifetime. Some people never learn that. It's always, and not that it's not a struggle or a battle, but if you're open and willing and like, okay, I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to take some help or ask for it, and I have faith in God, and that goes a long way in helping you heal. And I love that you're very open that, yeah, you are you. And that faith in God healed a lot of the wounds that you had, really changed for sure. Well, in a lot of ways, the trajectory of your life, because you met Shalom there as well. And then you were able to bring that faith and that whole attitude. Like you said, you struggled in the beginning. It's not always easy committing yourself to someone.
No.
He's laughing. So, but you were willing to work on it.
Yeah. Do you want me to say something about that?
Yeah.
About the willingness to ask for help?
Yes, please.
Yeah. See, because I have, since I started this business about 7.5 years ago, I have, even though it's a different perspective, and I actually encourage people in business to, especially with the financial side of it, to have a different perspective on it. There's a core fundamental ethos, if you like, that I apply the same at home as I do in work. And so, talking of counseling, when I, shortly after Shalom and I met, I think even before we got married, we started seeing a counselor who we still see, and he's fantastic. And so, and this is one of the things about faith, by the way, is that, see, God, it does miraculous things from the inside out, but he is a gentleman, and he never will do what he's not asked to do, and he doesn't come in unless you ask him, and you have to carry on asking him. And so that's what that's about. We go to counseling, and we are continually open with one another. And if you know anything about relationships, the good thing about having a third party in the room, it's kind of like a referee. And this guy, his name's Mike. He's a lovely fellow. And one of the things I learned early on is that we go and have conversations, and Mike would make this suggestion, which is exactly the same as the suggestion I might have said a number of times. But Mike says, "Oh, that's a good idea, Mike. That's a good." My wife automatic buy-in when somebody else says it, but when because there's so much emotion involved in a relationship when you've got a third party in the room. Anyway, so we've just continually used him collectively. I've just been using him again about 3 months ago. I started going back to him again, just one-on-one, because one of the things that's been an issue for me is my anger at home, and again, a bit like my dad, I kind of keep it in, then all of a sudden it kind of explodes. And he's just been amazing. And the difference that's happened in the last 3 months, again, is I've made a commitment to resolve this, and a commitment to love on my boys and communicate with them, and deal with them when they misbehave. We've got to deal with them, but deal with them in a measured way. Anyway, so yeah, I've just been, I continually seek help, and I've always had a coach in the business, and as you will no doubt know yourself, even though your coaching is focused on your business, if your business is not working out, no need to look outside, no need to look at Donald Trump or financial world or circumstances or your wife or your kids. Take a look at yourself. That if you can work yourself out, you're going to make this all work out. Or that's a good place to start, without being hard on yourself, without going, you're useless, but just being open and going, I need some help. I can work this out, but I don't quite know how. And so, yeah, I've had stacks of people ask for help. And, you know, like doing this, I love doing this. What I've learned is, because you do it from time to time in church as well. When you share your heart with people, it just impacts other people. You literally change people's lives. And I get a new sense of, it's kind of self-discovery. You know, in this conversation, you kind of opened up slightly different insights to what I've had before. So it's you know, and this is how human beings are designed to be. We're designed to be in relationship with one another, and when we kind of just get in relationship with one another and love each other, miracles happen. And so you could hardly, that little blurb, you wouldn't use that as your marketing speech for your coaching sort of thing. It's all a bit, but you know, that's kind of what happens. And you know, you learn and learn and learn. So and learning, I've just come to really come to embrace learning. So it's been massively successful to take me out of what's been a trough a lot of years ago into this place where, you know, I've got a amazing wife, amazing family, a business that's really starting to flourish. But it's not, there's no, you know, if you come to me looking for a quick fix, you're looking for the wrong guy.
And I like that. You said that. You said there aren't shortcuts. There's no magic pill. I was hoping New Zealand had the pill that we take to get rid of all the, isn't there a magic wand and it's in New Zealand?
Yeah, Middle Earth.
Exactly. I was hoping that you had the answer, but no, there are no shortcuts. There is no magic bullet. The magic 8-ball, it's not the answer to everything.
No.
And
there are things, by the way, too, like there's no magic bullet, and there are absolutely people out there that can make it a lot easier than if you do it by yourself. I've just literally found a coach recently to help me do some online stuff, and I'm going to work this out. You know, I've had to spend a bit of cash. You have to spend some cash sometimes. You have to invest. That's probably going to speed up a process that would have taken me a couple of years, and I might be able to do it in a few months. So, you know, there are absolutely those kind of opportunities out there, but the quick fix mentality is a flawed model, shall we say.
It is, but if you think about it, so you just said you could take something that would take you on your own a couple of years and put it into a couple of months. That actually is a quick fix. We don't see it that way, though, because
No.
you are investing in yourself. And you're right. And I've said this in other podcast interviews because it rings true in so many situations. But I had someone ask me once, are you good at everything you do? And I said, yeah, because I don't do the stuff I'm not good at. I find someone else. And, you know, they're called resources. You are never less of a person for, how can we possibly expect ourselves to be everything to everyone?
No.
I can hardly hold the candle burning that I've got. So you find those people that are resources, and you don't realize that by doing that, that is actually the quick fix. Yeah. And you're right. Sometimes you're investing money. You have to invest in yourself to get something back and speed up the process. But instead of it making you feel like you're less than because you're asking for help, it actually is the quick fix by asking for help. So
yes.
And you love sayings. Tell me some of the sayings you like. I'll give you the first one. You reap what you sow.
I do love sayings. You reap what you sow. Good things take time. I don't know. Just the more I go, it's just like I say. It's just there's no. I can't think of anything that you search on the spot. But it's just the yeah. Here's what I'll say. Zig Ziglar. Ziglar. I love Zig Ziglar.
Favorite. Yep.
See, here's one of the things that he said, which is, and this is the thing when you're learning stuff, in some ways you're not learning it. You're just drawing out what's already inside and what you already believed. And this is one of the things he says is that I believe you can get what you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And that's what it's, you know, if you, and like you say, you find what you're good at or sometimes to find out what you're not good at, but you're willing to learn, go and learn that, and then contribute it to someone else. You can have a great life.
And if it's possible, I always think, geez, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And you pretty much say the same thing. If it's possible, you know, it's possible for me, it's possible for all of us, anyone.
Absolutely.
But you're right. You capitalize on your strengths, learned or not, and you invest in others in those things that are your weaknesses. But I still feel like by trying to do it all alone, you're robbing someone else of that blessing to help you. Because I always want to be
putting it, Jen.
Thanks. I always want to be the one bringing the casserole to the lady who just had the baby, you know, aren't coming in to save the day. But God forbid you should bring me a casserole, because I don't need that. I got it all by myself.
The what? The what?
The casserole. Sorry, the dinner.
Oh, the casserole. Oh, you know, I thought, you know, I know what a casserole is. I didn't hear. I thought, is that? Did you say casserole? Is that some kind of pram or? I don't know.
No, you know, we want to always be the ones out the night on the valiant steed with your sword helping someone else. But when someone turns around and offers help, you know, it's ego and it's pride and it's, well, that's like, I can't do it all. Right. We're robbing them of the blessing to serve and do what they're good at by saying no or not asking. And so it takes a little humility sometimes to ask for help. And then you realize, wow, that's so much easier if we all kind of band together, like you said. I think
it's a big thing in life, but I notice it. I notice it most now because that's what I do in business. Is I try and help people, and I think pride's a massive issue. You know, people, and I don't know whether it's a stereotypical thing, but I think guys are a bit more that way inclined. And I notice some of the coaching groups that I've been involved in, there's a larger number of females because they are a little bit more inclined to embrace community and understand they don't, and kind of, but guys, mate, they want to try and do it themselves, and that's the hard way. You won't get as good a results. It's going to take you longer. You know. So yeah.
I want to wrap up because I love, one of my favorite things about you is how you talk about your wife. As a woman, that's how, you know, I want my husband out there talking about me. Although I want to be the same, I want to talk about him that way also. But I want you to share with me, because you've told me that she's your biggest and most wonderful asset. And because you lost your mom at 9, you are more blessed than most, or more thankful and vocal than most about how lucky you are to have her with your children. And you said you've had ups and downs, but tell me a little bit about how you get through the hard stuff and stay together.
Okay. So I think one of the things is, as I said, as I've asked for a lot of help, I've been, and I'm really persistent. And I'm forever looking. So I found people like Zig Ziglar's. He's been a key recent one, and he, for one, and like others, has really talks a lot about being grateful. And so one of the things that I do every morning is I get up early and I spend time actively remembering, choosing to remember what I'm grateful for. And Shalom's just been massive, mate. Like, she makes me laugh. She's such a lovely character. She's, gosh, she holds me to account, pal. She's a PhD qualified microbiologist. She did her PhD. She had Jack and Campbell in between the 3 years that she was doing her PhD. So she's just she's borderline workaholic, which I'm, you know, we get home, I'm the guy who wants to go and let's just sit down and have a cup of tea and think about what we want to do before we do anything. It's like, oh, just put the washing out and I'll just do this. So anyway, so I just really appreciate our differences. And as I said, we've had a lot of counseling. We've got some good friends who have got relationships. We've got Shalom's sister. She's got twin older sisters, and they've both got relationships that we have learnt from. And so we've just, and more to the point, we've learnt together. But this is the thing for me: we're a little bit reverse in our relationship. I'm the one who, when we've got a problem, I want to talk about it. I want to go, and she's the strong, silent type. She doesn't go to her man cave. She doesn't have a man cave, but she goes to her garden, you know. And interestingly enough, she lost her mum in a car accident, and there were some plants in the back of the car. They'd gone off to buy some plants, and which is another story, by the way, but I won't get into it. But so some of those plants that survived this car crash that took her mum's life are out in that back garden. So she loves gardening anyway, but it's very therapeutic for her. So I've learnt to not have my way all the time. You know, it's like, you know, and it's like you say, that this art of serving, it's such a blessing when I take care of myself so that I can go home and be a good husband. Here's one of the things that I learnt recently from my counselor. He said, here's a question to ask yourself, Hector. He said, when you get home and when you're around your wife, how is your allure? I was like, oh. But so that was really helpful because it kind of made me cringe and made me laugh. But it's like, I want my wife to be sexy and appealing and want me. What am I doing to make her want me? You know, and so I'm just always trying to be responsible and not in too, so it's like, so there's no one thing, Jen. It's just been it's just been a commitment to ongoing learning and telling her how much I love her. And, you know, again, Zig Ziglar, listening to him in the gym the other day prompted me to take a rose home to her. I don't always think of those things, so I have to make sure that I remember and purposefully do those things. And she's just committed out of this world, and so yep, that's what that's the main thing that gets us through. Is we're both committed to it, and we both work pretty hard at loving each other. How's that for an answer?
That's a fantastic answer. And you mentioned laughter, and
yeah.
Keeping each other on your toes and accountable, and laughing some more.
Yeah.
You know, that allure never hurts. And then you told me, and you just said that you're both very committed to us, the
Yes.
relationship. And what kids don't understand, like as much as I love my kids, if this fails, it kind of all falls apart.
Yes.
So there is no, this family doesn't exist without us first, and carving that time out to make sure that you work on it.
Yep.
Like you said, self-care, you brought up self-care. You have to take care of yourself to turn around and be able to give it to her, and you have to take care of and nurture that relationship so you can turn around and take care of the kids. And I think it's just that constant commitment to work on it. It's easy to love, honor, obey in good times. It's the bad. They always throw in like that nugget you don't like. And I had someone give me advice, like, don't even worry about doing it all when things are good. That's easy.
Yeah. Clearly. I think though, sorry, you go.
No, good, go.
No, because I think one of the things for me is continuing to work actively while things are good to reduce the chances of things getting bad, and to reduce and offset so that it's good more of the time, and not to stop working when it's good, because it is hard to do right in those bad times. Self-care, I can't prioritize that enough. For us, I've for a long time been fairly good at going, sweetheart, I need to get out of the house, I need to whatever. So one of the keys for me is being, as the husband, is to make sure that I give her opportunities and encourage her to do the same, because that's not her strength isn't looking after herself. And I don't know whether you can relate to this or not, but there's a couple of friends in particular that she has that, one of them she went out for a coffee for the other night. She'd kind of come home from work and was, busy cooking dinner and kind of a bit, and goes out, spends time with her friend, and all of a sudden life has returned to this woman. Smile on her face. And that's like it's sometimes it's, what did they do? They went out to a cafe, had a drink, and spent about an hour and a half catching up with each other. These people have heart to hearts, and it's just massive. So looking after myself is important, and I'm a bit of an old-fashioned kind of guy. I see it as my responsibility as the husband to take care of her, which means I need to look after myself, but then make sure she gets opportunity to look after herself. So it's that looking after ourselves together, but we also love time to look after ourselves with our own friends, and to keep our friendships outside of our relationships is I think is really important as well. And that's the thing that men can do poorly, especially when in my age, from the sort of 40 to 50, and they get to 60 and realize they've got no friends anymore because they've been invested in their family and their business. Anyway, yeah. So there's a ton of stuff in there, Jen. We could talk about that all day, eh?
True.
I really appreciate this.
Hector, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to be raw and vulnerable, because you're right. You open your heart, and others can benefit from that. We can make an enormous difference on people, in huge difference in very small ways. And so I appreciate your willingness to do that. And it was a pleasure.
Cool.
Thank you so much for listening in to Jen Taylor Rerouting. Like, share, and of course, comment. I welcome input with attitude. Get a copy of my book on Amazon, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess, or check out my website, jentaylor.net. And if you still want more, sign up for one of my coaching packages.